Happy November, everybody. This is the Atheist Chef. Now, this video is in response to a guy named Anti-Theism. So, without any further ado, let's begin. An atheist barbarian, you say? Who could be such an uncivilized, uncultured, savage beast?
Mock them, ridicule them.
Of course, Richard Dawkins. I don't know what it is about fundamentalist Christians, but they sure love turning him from this into this.
In public.
Oh, come the fuck on. Do you really think that's a demon laughing? Have you ever watched a comedy show or been to one where people laugh? People have weird laughs, and that one is not exactly... You know what? No, I can't even believe that I'm having to explain this to you.
It's happening in Wenzhou, known as the Jerusalem of China, where for months the government has demolished scores of churches and torn down hundreds of crosses.
What the government here is doing is so barbaric. Today we've seen the fundamental symbol of our faith violated, and it hurts us deep inside our hearts.
In this amateur video obtained by CNN and in the Salvation Church security camera footage, police brutally beat the faithful and drag them away.
Before I get too far, I want to note the title of this video. It's Atheists Caught Beating Innocent People on Church Camera. Now, of course, what we see here is not just some random atheist beating up on church people. This is the police beating up on Christian people. Now, why is that, you may ask? Well, unlike our friend here, I've done a little bit of research. So let's see what actually was happening. According to local officials, the demolition of churches in Wenzhou of the Zhejiang province did not target religion, but was aimed at rectifying illegal construction and paving the way for economic development using a 3-year plan consisting of demolition and refurbishing of hundreds of millions of square meters of all manners of buildings and not just churches. According to the Zhejiang Department of Housing and Urban Rural Development, over 512 million square meters of illegal constructions have been demolished or refurbished in the process. Only 1.3 million of the 512 million square meters was related to religious use. Other demolished buildings included homes and factories. Just 2.3% of the religious buildings involved were Christian churches. In an article that I will post below, along with pretty much anything else that I have talked about, I have an article for. It listed, as of May of 2014, 64 churches that were demolished. Now, it even goes and lists what buildings they were and why, and how they were demolished. 10 of the 64 were actually demolished. That is completely demolished, and a few of them are facing demolishment out of the 10. The rest were all their crosses were demolished or taken down, and some where they had an annex or a little smaller addition like a shack or something. And again, you can read it. Those were demolished. So 50 plus of these 64 were just for the crosses being taken down, and 10 were actually demolished. What this sounds like is not some Christian persecution where they're trying to abolish certain things. It sounds like height limit restrictions and things of that nature. So why does it seem that the Chinese government has this hard-on for these Christian crosses on top of these buildings? Why are they trying to take them down? Is it some sort of anti-Christian plot? No. Most likely it's for, as I mentioned before, building height restrictions. But why are those important? For one of the more shallow or aesthetically motivated reasonings, what is say if a government defines a certain landmark as a monument, they want to keep the building height limits low so that pretty much everyone can see it because it makes it look pretty, which to me is not really that crucial. But hey, you know, Paris does it, we all do it. You know, it looks nice on a postcard, and you're like, oh look, there's the tower, it's so pretty. But the most likely reason probably has to deal with safety. Now, as we know, airplanes tend to fly pretty low when they're going for a landing, and if a building that is nearby gets caught underneath its the wind vortex, it can cause damages to rooftops. Roofing tiles and stuff can be ripped off and flown off, and potentially either cause damage to another person or just simply just causing damage to the person's roof. And of course, the airport doesn't want to pay for that, and they don't want to risk hurting people just because a plane wants to land. So they have to limit the height to a church building or any other building for that matter for that reason. So if they put a cross on there that may be pretty sturdily mounted, but if a low-flying plane comes over it and it falls off and it falls down the roof and lands on somebody or causes more damage to the roof, then they get sued or whatever. Now, of course, this may not be the perfect example. Maybe some of these churches are by an airport, or maybe they're not. I don't know. I don't know all the rules. But the fact is there are building height limitations in the zoning districts and all that kind of different good stuff. There are certain rules that you have to follow. And if you don't follow them, well, then you can expect that the government's going to come in and try and demolish things. For example, the Sanjiang Christian Church in Wenzhou was demolished on April 28th for violating building code restrictions. Approval was given for a 30-meter high church occupying 1,881 square meters, but the church ended up occupying 11,000 square meters and was 58 meters high. So that's about 9,000 plus meters more than that was given approval for, and about 28 meters higher than they were given approval for. Talk about giving an inch and trying to take a mile. This is a complete violation of the building restrictions set in place by the government. Even though I don't fully understand why there are building restrictions for all scenarios, because I'm too lazy, I'm not going to look into it. But if they're set in place, they're set in place for a reason. Now, this isn't the end for the church. They actually still have approval to build an 1,881 square meter wide, 30 meter high church. The government is even giving them land to be able to do so, because they already have that agreement. Now, if the government was making this big stance against Christianity and all this kind of different stuff, they would not be doing this. Hell, they wouldn't have allowed them to have the church to begin with. But it gets even better. The National and Religious Affairs Commission in the Zhejiang province said that to protect religions, the province announced last year that illegally constructed buildings that were completed before December 31st, 2009 could apply for legal registration and certification. Which means that basically their buildings would be safer. I'm not sure of all of what would need to be done, but they could be protected from being shut down. There are more than 4,000 Christian churches, the same people said, in this province. More than half of them did not have property ownership and land certificates. Uh-oh, that's kind of a bad thing. No wonder the government would want to step in. They also continue to say that as long as the people would follow procedure, they would not be required to tear down the buildings. But apparently, they didn't follow procedure, and so they got their buildings, or their annexes, or their small portions of it, or their crosses destroyed. But for good reason, and not because there's this anti-Christian conspiracy going on in China. But it gets even better. On April 23rd, long before all this happened, the Zhejiang Christian Council and the Zhejiang Committee of the Three Self-Patriotic Movement of the Protestant Churches, and boy, I couldn't make that up if I had tried, They called for their believers to react rationally to these provincial acts, which means there was a group of Christians that said, hey, all of this is happening for a good reason and not because there's some anti-Christian conspiracy happening. It's because people are violating building codes and you got to follow those codes. And so those things are going to happen. And yet people just didn't do anything. They just went and acted all crazy like. And by this I mean they went out and did protests. They put up big giant lorries and vehicles in front of the buildings of the churches that they were going to be demolished, or parts that were going to be demolished, stood in front of the police as the police were simply just trying to help protect the construction workers do their jobs of tearing down the buildings or what have you. Christians were attacking as well. There was a lot of fighting and whatnot going on between both sides. So to call this innocent Christians getting beat up by atheists, no. It's Christians either didn't do what they were supposed to do or just didn't know or whatever. And then when all of a sudden their church was threatened, they lashed out and attacked. These Christians are not innocent. And it's not by atheists. It's by the police because the Christians were rioting. Alright, that's enough about that. Let's move on to the bit that really cheesed me off.
And, if necessary, need to be ridiculed with contempt. Mock them, ridicule them.
You fucking twit. You know fucking good and well that what Richard Dawkins was saying there should not fucking ever be superimposed on violence between police, atheists, and the Christians, the good, innocent fucking Christians. You not only took him out of context, but you decided to equate Richard Dawkins saying about mocking someone and putting it over violence. What the fuck is wrong with you? But it's not the first time asshats like Anti-Atheist here has used videos like this. So I'm going to show the real context of what was actually said and why you can't do what the fuck this jackass did.
Do you really believe that when a priest blesses a wafer, it turns into the body of Christ? Are you seriously telling me you believe that? Are you seriously saying that wine turns into blood? Mock them, ridicule them. In public. Don't fall for the convention that we're all too polite to talk about religion. Religion is not off the table. Religion is not off limits. Religion makes specific claims about the universe which need to be substantiated and need to be challenged and, if necessary, need to be ridiculed with contempt.
I hope you can see the difference between how Senior Douche Nozzle portrayed Richard Dawkins and to how it was actually said. Richard Dawkins was saying, hey, Christianity needs to be talked about too, including all types of religion. It needs to be discussed because Christianity makes claims that need to be proven, but these claims need to be challenged and, if necessary, mocked and ridiculed. But here is where some of you conspiratards may come in. Hey, you didn't even talk about the fact that maybe the government's lying. Maybe they didn't really destroy all of that land. Maybe it really is just a Christian or even a religious persecution, those fucking atheists. Well, you know what? You may be right. Maybe there is. Now, of course, my original argument to this would be, hey, why don't we just go and contact the Zhejiang, the urban development area, and let's go over the paperwork that's filed for filing these certain different churches, why they have these churches, in their file for demolishment, Or what about all the other properties that they had to destroy? Maybe we can get paperwork on that. Or maybe they made up paperwork. Well, maybe they did too, but now you're invoking another conspiracy and just throwing that in there for no reason, just because you want to have your persecution. You want Christians to be persecuted because this major us versus a them thing that you have raging boners for. However, for the sake of argument, I will even give you that. Let's just say it is a big conspiracy and the Chinese government are after all of these Christian churches for whatever reason. So what? What's your point? You have a bunch of people that didn't like Christians. You don't know if they're actually even atheist. Maybe it's just a Christian person or a person of a different religion that doesn't like Christianity. Or maybe a person that's a Christian that just wants more money. Maybe not a true Christian, but a person that follows a certain doctrine of the Christian faith. Who knows? You can't say that it was just atheists, though. And secondly, it doesn't really fucking matter. Because it doesn't represent what atheists are or what they believe in. You can't go around giving a small group of people or an individual, such as Richard Dawkins, and take from one example, take one thing that they do and go, well, that's what all atheists do. This is not the first time that I've had to correct you on similar matters. But you are so disingenuous, so dishonest, and so much of a little chicken shit that you continue to portray atheists in this way. You need to grow the fuck up. If you want to be a part of the great debate, you should quit doing stupid shit like this. That's all I have to say, folks. This is the Atheist Chef, signing off. Peace. Happy November, everybody. This is the Atheist Chef. Now, this video is in response to a guy named Anti-Theism. So, without any further ado, let's begin. An atheist barbarian, you say? Who could be such an uncivilized, uncultured, savage beast?
It's happening in Wenzhou, known as the Jerusalem of China, where for months the government has demolished scores of churches and torn down hundreds of crosses.
What the government here is doing is so barbaric. Today we've seen the fundamental symbol of our faith violated, and it hurts us deep inside our hearts.
In this amateur video obtained by CNN and in the Salvation Church security camera footage, police brutally beat the faithful and drag them away.
Before I get too far, I want to note the title of this video. It's Atheists Caught Beating Innocent People on Church Camera. Now, of course, what we see here is not just some random atheist beating up on church people. This is the police. Oh, come the fuck on. Do you really think that's a demon laughing? Have you ever watched a comedy show or been to one where people laugh? People have weird laughs, and that one is not exactly... You know what? No, I can't even believe that I'm having to explain this to you.
Mock them, ridicule them.
Of course, Richard Dawkins. I don't know what it is about fundamentalist Christians, but they sure love turning him from this into this.
What?